live. All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is Corey Gumbs. This is the Sound of Us. It's a new podcast that I'm launching. It's about telling stories about the diaspora. We have many stories to tell, and it's about taking control of our narrative and what we're trying to accomplish with our voices in audio. And today we have a very special guest, a friend, a community leader, and a great mentor here in these audio streets. We have Anna DeShawn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Anna tell everybody who she is, what she's been doing for the past 15 years, and why she's an OG in these streets.
Corey, I don't think you had to put that part in there. Corey, that wasn't in the run of show.
We start a little late.
It wasn't in the run of show. First off, thank you for having me, Corey. I appreciate it. I want to thank everybody who's joining right now. I appreciate y'all. Please let us know where you're joining from too. I think that's the beauty of these lives, is that we can be with each other here in this real time. So I appreciate that. I am Anna DeShawn. Pronouns, anything respectful is amazing. I am a social entrepreneur, community activist, award-winning podcaster, founder, and someone who truly believes that I can do anything that I dream up. I believe what my parents told me, that I could be whatever I wanted to be. And I'm a big Hamilton fan. And so if you're into Hamilton, you know that song is like, I'm running out of time. He's writing like he's running out of time. I'm moving like I'm running out of time, with urgency in this moment, because I feel like the need is just that great for what we're building. And so I'm excited to tell more people about it.
That's dope. Can you hear me? Because I think my mute was on. All right. There we
Yeah,
go.
I can hear you.
All right. So, I guess let's start with like your journey into audio. I know you came from the corporate space, and there's a lot of people who know your story already, but we have people here on watching the show right now that may not know your story. You basically started with E3 Radio, so let's start there and let's just work our way to what we're about to talk to tonight, which is the app that you found, the Qube.
Absolutely. So in 2009, I started a radio station on Blog Talk Radio. Come on, let's go. OGs out here in the space that know about Blog Talk. So I started there because I wanted to create a space to amplify what I was seeing in Chicago, which was, at the time, it was Black and queer stories. And if you ever find a logo of E3 Radio, the original, it was purple and white. And I had a friend, we met up for drinks. She was like, Anna, we need a queer radio station, right? Like, I was like, I don't want to do nothing queer. I want this to be for my Black people. I want to do queer stuff, but I really want to be about Black people. She was like, but we really do need a queer radio station. And I wasn't interested at the time of really making that change, because once people hear LGBTQ, that's all they hear. And I didn't want to be pigeonholed to just that. But child, it was very clear the moment I started that show that everything about it was queer. Every guest I had on was queer. They were at some intersections, of course, because I live at the intersection, so that is naturally my community of people. And it just became so clear that I was fighting a losing battle. And it wasn't long after that that I turned the logo into the rainbows, and it exists as it does today. God, Corey, 15 years later, as you put it, I don't even count the years anymore. But we are today an online radio station playing queer artists all day long. And I'm hosting our award-winning podcast called Queer News that we drop every Monday morning by 9 a.m. Chicago time, 5 or 6 queer news stories that I think folks should know about. And that's been at the heart of my work, is amplifying LGBTQ stories, particularly at the intersections, because I think a lot of folks don't know, if you're not gay, child, the gay community is so white, okay? And so the media that is produced inside the LGBTQ community is also very white, and it's also very male. And so when I show up in the space, I'm making it a point to amplify the voices that are often going unheard and the stories that are often going unheard inside the LGBTQ community. And so that is my work. That is what I'm passionate about. That's where I started. And I've always loved audio, always loved radio. And at some point, you just got to stop. I had to stop fighting the podcasting movement. And so I stopped fighting and embraced it. And look at me, I'm on
Yeah,
Black Pod News with Corey.
that's a big thing, right? Like answering the call. Like I think we all at some point have that story where it's like you were fighting against it. You didn't, somebody came to you or said or challenged you to do something like what happened with me with starting the Black Podcast Association. You're like, oh yeah, I'll do it, but like I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. But then you start to find out that the community itself is like, we need this, we want this, and you answer the call. So I think that's amazing that you started that. That's where you basically wound out answering that call. How has the experience been for you? It's like the growth as a somebody who started that's moving into the founder that you are now.
I mean, it's a journey, right? It's a roller coaster ride. I quit corporate 5 years ago, and the ride has changed completely. I think what has been important for me is to always center my why and my community. They keep me going, literally. The Q crew, which is our paid community of our podcast, okay, they quite literally keep this engine moving forward. I'm not someone who's over here depending on brand deals, waiting on the next call to be made to me. It's the people that keep this work going and keep it alive. And so my work is making sure that I'm fortifying that I'm giving my audience what they need, what they want, and listening and always being down to pivot and always being open to the next possibility. Right. And so I think that is why I've been able to be sustainable in this work for such a long time. Even after quitting corporate and doing this full time, I'm still here. And still got my house, okay? Still got my wife, my dog. Uh, child done lost a lot of things, but I ain't lost that, right?
Right.
And so just really staying focused on my why and centering the community. That's what I think has proven successful for me.
So between now you mentioned you quit your corporate job 5 years ago, and that corresponds and when you started this journey with the Qube. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that? Like that, where was that pivotal moment for you where you decided like, you know what, I have to go at this particular environment is not suiting what I'm trying to do, and I have to commit to what I'm trying to do.
Well, anybody okay, born in 1983, okay? So anybody who is of this seasoned millennial age understands what we grew up in, right? We were breaking generational curses, right? We were the first ones on Facebook. We saw what technology could do um, in real time, right? We were told to go to college and make some money and do things differently. And then you'll get a good job. And, right, you're going to, all these milestones along the way. I did all that. And I I did corporate America for a very long time in a tech startup. And at some point, especially Black folks that are here, right? We understand that no matter what you do, the isms of living in this country will always, always find their way into your journey and into your story. So, you know, during my time at corporate, I was really good at what I did. And I still got passed over for opportunities, right?
Right.
I still was not the first person on the list when they thought about asking somebody's opinion, right? Um, I killed it. And still, I was not never first on the list. Now, after a while, you can only take that for so long. And I was also someone who always wanted to bet on myself, but just never knew when was going to be the time that I actually took the big leap of faith, right? And I had set lots of dates for when that was gonna be, and all those dates passed. And I ended up meeting a founder one time, and he was just like, "You can't set no date. You're just going to know. Your body is gonna feel it, your environment's gonna feel it, and you're gonna know that that's the time for you to leave." And for me, it was during COVID. It was absolutely during COVID. I had all I could take. I had also achieved everything I could achieve at that particular job, and quite literally signed the biggest deal we had ever had. And at that point, And I was in an industry that was being inundated by business. And I felt the wrath of capitalism at its finest moment, where salespeople don't have to sell, contractors go out, okay? Dollars come in, and people who have to do the work, right, are forgotten about. That's the life that I was living. And I was like, if I can sustain this, what could I do if I tried to sustain myself? If I gave myself all this energy that I am giving corporate and giving these teams and making these other folks successful, could I do that for myself? And I was just at a point where I had to decide if I was ready to do it, and I was. I talked to my wife, she said, "Do it," and I was like, "Bet." Say less. It say less. So that has been the journey for me.
How important was that for your to have the support of your wife and, in making that decision?
Oh, huge. I needed health insurance. Child, let's talk about the realities. Okay. You can have a dream, but we got a plan. We can't be out here without being able to get some medications. So I really needed her to be, because she also has her own dreams. She has her own businesses. And so we really needed to be on the same page about if it was cool for me to take the leap first, right? And her sustain a full-time job while I figure out how we was going to make this work for our household. Well, we have real bills to pay, right? I'm not 22 still like living on my couch and like my bachelor pad on north side of Chicago. There's other people who I'm responsible for. And so we really did need to be on the same page around what that was going to look like. And also, what is the worst case scenario? Like, we really planned out and thought about what was the worst case scenario. All of this fails. I don't make any money. Listenership don't move the needle. Nothing is happening. What is the worst case scenario? Do we lose our house? Do we lose our cars? Where do we live? How do we get around? And at every turn, we had an answer. At every turn, honestly, it wasn't that bad. It was bad, but it could be worse,
Right.
right? At every turn. And after doing all of that auditing and questions and answers and conversation, we knew I could do it and we was going to be okay. And that gave us what we needed to trust the process.
Yeah, I think that's important. I know, like, when I meet people and they want to talk to me about like starting a podcast and stuff like that. One of the first questions I always ask is like, have you had this conversation with your significant other? Is this a conversation you've had with your family? Because there's a level of commitment that needs to be done. Well, just in general, starting any business, right? You need to make sure you have the commitment and the support of your family or the people around you, because it is a big risk, and it's a big leap, and and it's a lot of unknowns, and you're leaping into the unknown, and it can cause fractures and risks in your personal relationships if you don't get ahead of that and you don't have a clear plan. Don't be like Corey. That's what I tell people, because I just be doing stuff. But I just
Child, I just be doing stuff too. My
learn how to
team tell
plan.
me all the time,
I
Anna
just be like,
doing
"Hey,
things.
bro, I got this."
They
you
be
know.
like, Anna just doing things. You doing things? Maybe,
But
maybe.
realistically, you gotta have people join, you gotta have communication and a good relationship, and try to, people might not always see the vision, right? And I think that's part of this journey you've been on, right?
Mhm.
Is like the original vision you may have had didn't work out, right? Or you were avoiding what you didn't want to do with E3 with the radio station, and then you find out, well, this actually is needed, and it is working. And my computer just decides to cut off the screen. But my point I'm trying to make is like, there is a leap of faith, and there has to be communication with the people around you, whether it's your friends, family, and the team, because you're going to need the support. This is not a easy journey, and it can be a lonely journey at times. So, I commend your wife. She's a wonderful person, amazing,
I
and
agree.
I also respect the fact that you said she has her own dreams, right? And that's
Mhm.
important to consider when you decide to go out on these streets and chase your own dream. Is like, how does it affect someone else's dream, and making sure you guys are in alignment with that. So that's real commendable. Um, but the leap of faith that you took from leaving corporate and going and doing your own thing, is that the point where you decided to start the Qube? Like, what was this like? Walk us through, like, what was the idea? What made you decide to do the Qube? What was the spark that got you to say, all right, is enough, and I want to do this idea?
Sure, yeah. So we had it was me and a couple friends, right? And
It's
I
always
was
those
thinking about
friends. It's always those
it.
friends.
Always, always, always co-conspirators out here. And we were thinking about how we grow the radio station. And as you all know, we don't listen to radio like we used to in the same ways that we used to listen to radio. Radio is now podcast. The moment DVR hit television, child, everybody wanted everything on demand, right? Um, and I love radio, and I wanted to stay true to that and honor that work. And how do we still grow our listenership? How do we still remain relevant? How are we telling our stories? And so we began having those conversations. And as we were having those conversations, of course, podcasting came up. And then we began to talk about podcasting and how we couldn't find the shows that we were looking for. Where are the Black queer people at? Where are the Black people at? How do we go about, tapping in to podcasting? Once we hit that note, it took off to its own other place. And in these conversations and these planning sessions, the Qube was born in that moment. And honestly, the name the Qube came from E3 Radio. And a lot of people don't even know the story. So E3, I was in the shower, child, because all the best ideas come when you're in the shower. So I'm sitting here trying to think of the name of what this new venture is going to be. And I was like, well, E to the power of 3 is to cube something. I was like, what if we just turn that C into a Q, because I'm queer as hell, and turn it into the Qube. And then this be the podcasting arm of our work. And truly, that's how the Qube was born. It was meant to be an extension of the radio station. It was meant to be a place you can hear the radio station and find all these dope podcasts and solve discoverability. But then I quickly realized that the Qube needed to be its own entity, that this thing took off and took a life of its own in a way that I didn't even foresee happening. And so it went from being a project of E3 Radio. So if you see any of the early stuff, you'll see all the branding says the Qube powered by E3 Radio. Like that is where we started. And it was clear after a while that it needed to be its own entity and its own project. And that's where we are. That's where we started. Yeah.
All right. So, like, what was the idea? What was the what was the process behind the idea of, because I know what we have, the iteration we have of the Qube now, and we'll get into that part in a few.
Mhm.
But the first iteration of the Qube, what was the motivation? What was the idea behind it? Because that's different than what you're trying to do now.
Yeah, the first idea was we were going to curate. Okay, we were going to have a curated mobile app of the best Black and brown podcasts out here in the world. And so with that in mind, we created what I call a Kubrick. Okay. And then at the time I was working with Experience J. Everybody know Experience J. She's in the audio drama space doing her thing. Amazing. Sound designer, editor. And so she created a Kubrick for the audio drama side. And then I got a team together of people who were down to curate podcasts. It was about 6 or 7 people. And I began asking people to submit their pods. And so, child, I'm a Virgo. Can I preface this by saying I'm a Virgo? As I talk about the process that I developed is so Virgo, okay? It's so extra. It was everybody listening to at least 2 episodes, 2 people curating every single podcast. We had a scoring system, okay? Categories, sound design, host. You had co-hosts. Do y'all have good chemistry? Are you consistent? If it's a story, do you have a story, a beginning, middle, end? Like there was a lot of thought put into these Kubricks that we developed. The curators would curate. If you met our minimum average score, I can't remember what the score was at this moment, but if you met it, you got into the Qube. Okay. And that was the idea. We were going to house the best and the best of the best is what we had deemed it to be at the time. And child, that did not work. Um, I look back now and I think, oh, Anna, it was it was so pie in the sky and such a, you thought you had a really good idea. The essence of it is good in that solving discoverability, creating a space where we can go and find our pods. But child, that curation part, mm, mm, mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little crazy. Like when you look back at when you first started with an idea and the evolution of it to where you're at now, and all the lessons that have been learned, right, from that experience. But when I came to help you with when you with some of the development, you actually had started producing shows. You were already in the process of producing shows. Was that the part of the first iteration or the second? Because you also won some awards for some of those shows, right?
We did. We did. Honestly, it was
Some good came out of that, right? Like some learning that came out of that too, right?
this journey has been amazing.
Right.
I cannot discount this journey has taken me to places, to stages, brought people in my life who I now call friends, who are family. This journey of the Qube has been unlike anything I've ever experienced in my entire life. E3 radio is its own work, and that also has changed my life in so many ways, as well as the Queer News podcast and that work. But the work of the Qube and inside this podcasting space has been something completely different. And I cannot discount any of that. So yeah, Corey, when you began working with me, um, child, that's when money was getting low. Okay. Because when we started with a plan. I had just left corporate. I had saved my money. Y'all heard me. I didn't talk to my wife. Okay, we didn't had a plan together. I had launched the crowdfunding campaign. We raised $70,000 to launch the Qube. I secured our first investment. Big ups to Fifth Star Funds here in Chicago that they write the first checks for underserved and underrepresented founders here in the tech space in Chicago. They wrote us a $25,000 check. Child, we were moving. I felt like we had all of the momentum in the world to get the Qube started and off. I had a developer, I had a designer at the time, I had a vision. I'm a good speaker. I was in all the accelerators. I had done so many accelerators, the pitch competitions, the writing of the grants. I had done everything that everybody said I was supposed to do. I was out networking. We were in the moment in the VC land where people had money. This is, George Floyd moment, right? Where people are actively investing into Black creatives and ventures at tremendous speeds, right?
Right.
And a lot of people were investing in early stage founders at the time. And I just knew we were going to find somebody who believed in what we were doing, who was down to invest in what we were doing at a greater level. And all we needed to do was show the momentum, show that I had built something before. And so all of that was going in our favor. All of that was moving in our favor. And yet and still, child, it didn't work in the way I thought it would. And so when you came along, Corey, the money was getting low. The developers, after a while, communication wasn't great. It wasn't as good as it could be. The vision, exploded. Scope creep, child, just all the things that take a tech startup down so fast. And so I knew that we had to begin creating because this was also a time where people were investing in Black podcasting and the work of Black podcasters. And so I was like, well, let us begin creating. I'm good at creating. I've got ideas of things I want to create. And that went well. We did Black HIV in the South was the first one. Then we were able to secure a deal with Urban One for distribution of that podcast, a 4-part series. Then we wrote a grant with PRX, ended up with a 2-year deal in distribution and creation, production deal with them for 2 seasons of Second Sunday. And I was still at the very beginning of this journey and I had 2 distribution deals. So the platform was quickly running out of money, but the creative work was picking up the slack and continuing to keep our brand out here and the work in which we were doing at the forefront. And so I rode the wave. Child, if this ain't gonna work in this moment, then let us pivot and do what we're really amazing at and stay relevant, right? Um, and show what this brand can be, and let's roll with that. So I'm always here for the pivot, but I've never forgotten where we started, which was the platform and wanting to solve discoverability for so many people, listeners and creators.
Right. I mean, that's one thing that you've been very consistent with over the years. You mentioned the wave, and like all waves, they eventually come crashing, right? They hit the
Mhm.
point where they hit the sand, and it's like, what happened, right? So,
Yeah.
what was that moment for you? I know you mentioned like the money was starting to, like a lot of startups suffer. Scope creep was coming in. fighting
Mhm.
with developers. That's a whole nother side of discussion that we can get into alone. But when the money started drying up and the reality of everything set in, it was like, okay, we're coming to a crossroads here. What was that journey for you? What was that like? What was that moment? And how did you respond to that moment?
It was a reality check. Let's be very clear. The deals were fantastic, and you gotta pay people. Yes, and these are people are not even working at their regular rate because the budget don't even allow for that. But you still you're right, you have to pay people, and especially when you want them to do good work and consistent work. And the expectation was that there would be ads sold, right? The expectation was that there would be residual income that would come after you sign that initial deal. And that just wasn't the case. That's just not how things played out. And we can get into the business of podcasting, the CPM model per thousand, whatever they're charging, $40, $35 per thousand listens. But to get to that volume, there also has to be some type of investment to get to that place. It doesn't just happen always organically unless you got a million followers and then you get a quarter of them to listen to your podcast, right? So there was just what the money that I was expecting that was embedded into these deals just didn't happen. And that reality came quick that we are putting in a lot of work, and anybody who has created a podcast that is good, okay? And child, your podcast could be bad and it still take a lot of time. There's still a lot of work to be done to get it to publishing and letting people know that it exists. So that reality came quick and fast and in a hurry. And when it did, I really did have to think about how I wanted to shift my energies because I still believed in the brand. I still believed in what we were doing. But when those deals ended, the reality was I didn't have $60,000 to create another season of Second Sunday. And I asked everybody what it would take to do it, and that was the number. Very good. One day we gonna have that 60,000 to make another season of Second Sunday, but I don't have that, right? And so what are we gonna do in the meantime? After that, that's when I pivoted to doing the podcast salons, building community, building audience as a way to remain relevant and to keep uplifting, right? Black and Brown podcast. Always continuing to go back to the why. We are here to help discoverability. How can we do that? Well, if this app ain't gonna happen in this moment, what are other ways we can show up in this space? And doing the podcast salon, highlighting 2 or 3 Black or Brown podcasts at these events, putting a spin on it with the silent headphones. We did the tour, right? Partnering with folks like yourself and other amazing people in this space helped us to do that, helped us to solve the problem outside of this technical platform. So, child, I'm just here pivoting, trying to figure it out until we until we could get back to this moment.
You mentioned the silent headphones thing. So, like, when you did your tour, right, and I was doing my summer social here in New York, and you were coming here, it just made sense for us to come together and you. I think that was one of the best. We had some really great events, but that was one of the
Yeah.
most engaging events that we had. That was actually when we first started growing too. Like, I tried to do something bigger and better, but that was an event that also showed me like how we can utilize audio in different spaces outside of just the conventional put your podcast on an RSS feed, and just put it out there and hope that people listen to it. It showed that you can do like that in-person event and seeing all the people, walking around, watching all the people so engaged. It was the weirdest thing for me because it's like we're all sitting in the same room, we're
Yeah.
all hearing the same thing, but it's going through the headphones and everybody having a different. You could see everybody's processing and taking it in a very personal manner. So like I was really appreciative of that tour that you did because it helped me to see like not only the power of our content and hearing the different trailers and stuff and hearing the story and you talking about the story and what you were doing at that time just showed me like the power of how like this medium of audio podcasting can help us share our stories outside of the conventional ways and reach audiences and connect with them. So I think that was a real powerful moment. I'm listening to you talk, and I was like, I didn't even know some of the stuff that you were going through, and I get that as a founder myself, and somebody who's like, life is sometimes getting in the way, and you have these obstacles, and sometimes you're just so like laser on like trying to figure it out. Like how did you handle that personally? Like, like it becomes a challenge. You start to look in the mirror, you start to question yourself. Like, how did that make you feel? How did you process through that stuff?
Child, my prayer corner. My prayer corner, my meditation corner, that's how I ground myself. But I think everybody, if you choose to make any type of big leap in your life, any type of leap of faith, you have to have some type of grounding practice. Whether it's going out, put your feet in some grass, touch grass, if it's like a music, if it's going to work out, you have to find something
Right.
that grounds you back on the ground, right? Because especially in the early days, in the early journey of the Qube, the transition from corporate America to doing your work on your own, it is a huge challenge because the way in which you work in corporate is often not healthy, right? At one point when I worked there, we had a rule like you had to respond to an email within the hour.
Wow.
I don't even want to tell you how many emails we received every single day. But this was an expectation, right? Um, we would meet to be meeting. Like there's practices that you learn that are just not healthy for your well-being, and then you go work for yourself and you want to break those cycles, but that in itself takes so much time to
Right.
figure out how you work, how you want to show up in the work. What does it mean to have time to think? Right? We don't often make time and space for us to actually think and not do. And and to understand that for me, thinking is such a big part of the work. And it doesn't happen when I'm sitting in front of a computer screen. Right? It happens when I am on my walk or when I'm working out or when I'm sitting on my couch and I have my phone in a hand and my notes or I'm talking to my notes, right? Like figuring out how I show up. And so it was a real roller coaster in the beginning to figure out how I wanted to show up in the world. So my grounding place is my meditation and prayer corner, child. I'm a church kid through and through, and I needed a space. And so when we got this house, I told my wife, "This is a space you can't put your clothes here." Okay, we had boundaries about this space. Don't this is my space. You can have the rest of this whole bedroom, okay? And she does. She takes full advantage of the whole space. She's a whole fashionista, okay? She's a stylist. Everything is everywhere. This is my little area. I have my light there. I have candles there. I have my manifestation books. My affirmation journal is there. My mom's Bible is there. I have a couple of other books there as well, and I have my headphones. There's a pair of headphones that just stay in my meditation corner, and so at one point, it was a daily practice for me to go there and just to ground myself and say what I'm grateful for. What happened yesterday that I am grateful for? Of course, every day I'm grateful that I woke up, but truly what happened that I am grateful for? And writing that down every single day, it reminded me that I'm doing okay. It reminded me that I am moving forward, that I'm not remaining static because it's so easy to feel like you haven't made any progress.
Right.
Because especially if you're a big dreamer, you haven't reached the dream yet, so you just feel like nothing is working. When in fact, things are working. It's just things take time. And so all of that practice really helps me. I don't go every day like I used to, but I go at least 3 or 4 times a week into my corner. Sometimes it's in the middle of the day when I just need to reset and just remind myself that I'm okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta learn those healthy habits because my way of resetting is to have Crystal sending me a text message.
Boy, we don't need to talk about your reset, okay? I've seen it in action. That work to
I was gonna get into the conversation of what is the failure, like, not failure, because you released the article this week, right, about
I
your
did.
experience, and it was a great article, and I commend you for the transparency. Can you talk about it? Because there was something in there that you mentioned, and I see Lisa Wolfer of Stitch Please in the comment section mentioned the book that you talked about in that article, The Big
Mm.
Leap,
Mhm.
by Gay Hendricks, right? Was that I
Yeah,
can't see, I'm blind. Um,
that's it.
but
Uh-huh.
let's talk about this article because I want to get into the Cube and I want to get into what you're trying to do and all that stuff too. So like, let's talk about and I think the part for me that stuck out the most was the word failure, what it meant to you, and now what it like, and how it's evolved since since you had that hardcore belief in what about the word failure and where you're at now with it. So can you explain that a little bit, and give us some insight on that?
Absolutely, happy to. But for me, growing up being that overachieving kid, the kid whose father is, a lifelong teacher, okay, who I only missed 1 day of school that I can remember in my entire life because I had the stomach flu, and he still wanted me to go to school, okay? Uh, my mom had to tell him, "No, she gonna stay at home." Um, Failure was not an option. It was not something we discussed. It was so far from the expectations. And, so when the Qube didn't work out the way that I wanted to, right, and I pivoted, and all those things worked out, right? I worked hard, had great relationships with folks in the community that we built over time, and I made it a point to show up. I did all the things that I think you're supposed to do when you're trying to build something, from within, not parachuting into a community. Um, but it still didn't work. Right, and so at some point when I began to reflect on wanting to come back to the platform side of it, I had to really sit with the fact that it didn't work. That Anna, like, you had a plan, you tried it, and you really did fail at this particular situation. Um, there's a lot of amazing things that came out of the situation. The podcast we discussed, I didn't even bring up the podcast we did with Tracy Trees, the podcast I did with Adele Coleman, right? And the head nod and the success of that with DCP. And I mean, there's joy in the breakthrough. I mean, there has been a lot of amazing work that has come out of that failure, and the platform didn't work. I raised money to build a platform. I got investment to build a platform, right? I saved my money out of corporate to build a platform, and that platform got close. We had prototypes. I thought we were going to have a mobile app, and it did not. It did not manifest in the way in which I thought that it would. So, getting to the place where I could accept that failure, it took a minute. It took a minute to accept that and to understand that, for me right now, it's a badge of honor. It's sort of a rite of passage. And I was in part of one of these accelerators. I was talking about the accelerators earlier. And this one accelerator I was in, she gave us this reading, and it equated entrepreneurship to science and how we look at science and experiments, and how we need to look at our businesses in the same way. That in science, when you're experimenting with something, failure is expected. As a matter of fact, if you don't fail, how do you know what formula is actually going to work?
Right.
Right. And the whole point is that your business is also an experiment. So to fail means that you're going to find a solution that actually works after you've tried something. But the key is to keep trying until you find it. Right. And that freed me so much from all the things I have learned about how I'm supposed to show up in this world, right? It freed me to be able to be okay with failure, because the failure is going to lead me to where I need to go to find the right solution, right? And to find the success that I'm actually seeking. And it took a couple of years, honestly, to get the clarity I needed. So many conversations with people, so many people, Corey, I talked to, founders, podcasters, people who listen to podcasts, over about 2 years, and business folks, to get the clarity I needed to build a business model that I felt like could actually work. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, and a couple other people that are watching and listening right now, like, it's hard, right? It's hard to let go. And I know I struggle with it too. Sometimes when like, especially with the team that I'm building now, like, when it's like, hey, Corey, like, we should do this or we need to do this, and that you have this vision and you have this thing, and you're like, I'm stuck on here, right? This is I want to go here, and part of that comes from a place of like, I don't want to fail because I've been working at this thing, and it's like, you don't want to, you don't. It's almost admitting failure, right? And that's a struggle, and it's an internal conflict, but I think like you, like for me, since I'm very so science oriented, I see the fun in failure, right? It's kind of like okay, this is how you learn whether this is working or if it's true or not, as my friend likes to always remind me, right? If you do an experiment and you can replicate it, that means it must be true or as close to the truth as possible, right? It gets more nuanced than that. But um, so I think it's important, and I think for content creators and people who are going to watch this after our live, they need to understand that failure is not it's not really failure, right? Like there's so much good that came out of that failure. There's so many lessons learned, despite everything that you accomplished, and how it just like didn't manifest as you say, like it came out. I think it's very important for people to hear these words and understand that it's okay to have these feelings and have the people around you and support you and help you work through it. It's when you admit, like when you have finally accept it as a failure and you decide not to push further, is when in my opinion, you've lost. So I really do appreciate that, and I want to that leads me something to what you wrote in the article, and when I read it, I was like, yeah, like like when I have to remind myself that this is stuff that I listen to and I engulf and I hear this all the time. But let's talk about that moment when you learned about falling in love with the problem with the problem. Or having
Absolutely.
fall in love with the problem, because sometimes that happens in this space too, right? You're in love with it, that everything's moving forward. You're like, you're feeling all this energy, all this positive, and then the wall comes and it just smacks you in the face, and you're like, oh my
Mhm.
god, what happened, right? Like, and then however you process it and deal with it is how you do it. But tell us about that part of your journey.
Yeah, so that's part of that 2 years of working to find clarity on what the next move was gonna be, and it's funny, I see everybody who's in the chat, so there's, like I see Crystal in here, like, Crystal's one of the people I was texting, like, "Oh, I had this moment," like, this there was be, like, these epiphanies I would have. Adele, I would have these I would text them, and be like, "Oh, well, this is what I think I wanna call it. Oh, this is what I'm thinking right now." Because it was this process every time I talked with somebody. I think not to take a step back, but I think as creatives, we often have so many good ideas. Like, I don't feel like I've ever stopped having an idea. And I've talked to artists about this too. There's like, oh, I always have something else I want to paint or something else I want to draw. I think as creatives in the audio space or in a media space, there is always another story that we want to tell, another pod we want to create. And some for me, and I'll use I statements, I would just go and do it. I would not waste a moment. I'm doing that next week. I'm somebody who can create graphics. I know how to use tech. I can do it all myself. I don't need no help. I'm about to do this right now. I'll figure out the plan later, but we're gonna see if this works. And that's cool for a season, maybe for a time or two. But this had to be treated differently. And I treated it differently in that I sat with it. Like, I just literally just needed to sit with it for a while and talk with other people because every time I talked to somebody else, I was inspired by something they said, something else. They said something that somebody else said that reinforced this message. And this particular conversation, big ups to my homie Shayna, co-host of the Bad Queers podcast. And she was like, "You need to talk to my friend Robin." And I was like, "All right, cool. If somebody recommends I should talk to them and I trust them, okay, let's talk to Robin." Found out Robin is the creator of the Her app, which is the um, lesbian dating app. And it took months to get on Robin's calendar because that's how it is.
Right.
And we got a chance to meet, and she prefaced it. She was like, "And I just want you to know, I don't hold back. I don't hold any punches. Like, we're gonna talk, we're gonna talk." And I was like, "That's exactly what I need in this moment. So I appreciate you in advance." And she told me during our conversation, "I really need you to fall in love with the problem and not your solution." And when I tell you, it it was a moment I've had to sit with that statement for a really, really long time because I really love my solution. Family, I just want y'all to really know that I love what I envision for what this looks like in the end. How people interact with it, how it looks, all the things it can do. And she was like, "That's great." But I want you to fall in love with the problem again. Like, I want you to fall in love with the problem and not the solution that you've come up with. And what that forced me to do was have to go back to the basics, like go back to the beginning. What is the problem and how exactly are you choosing to solve it? The problem is that we can't find Black and brown podcasts. The ways in which we find it are Google search, YouTube search, and word of mouth. That's how we are finding content, and social media, Instagram Reels, TikTok. But there's no hub for our content, which blows my mind. That blows my mind today, given how many of us are creating, right? And so that's the problem, one of the problems. Creators also have problems because oftentimes we don't have huge marketing budgets. So how are we finding our audience? We are creating reels into the void. Yes, hoping the algorithm connects us to our next favorite super fan, right? We're depending on that as creators. For listeners, I think there's two types of listeners. There's the listener who's already listening, who is looking for that next thing to listen to, and is just waiting on the algorithm, waiting on a friend to tell them what they're listening to, right? And then there's the listeners who want to listen, who want to get into podcasts, but have absolutely no idea where to start. They don't know if they should go to Apple Podcasts. They don't know if they should go to Spotify. They don't know if they should go to YouTube, right? The beautiful part about podcasting is that fact that it's decentralized. That's the power of it, is that it's not governed by the FCC, that it is niche, that it doesn't cost a lot to get started. And that decentralization of the media also causes confusion
Right.
for potential listeners on where they should start, right? And so coming back to those problems and figuring out exactly how we can solve them and not solving them all at one time because budgets don't allow that. That's not what an MVP is for. But starting with the largest problem, right? Finding an audience that's down to support that problem, who want to help you solve that problem, and then building from there. So it really took me back to the beginning. I rewrote mission, I rewrote the vision, I rewrote our values, I rewrote a launch plan. Child, I rewrote absolutely everything. Got rid of curation. What are we curating for? Who says it's good? I say it's good. They say it's good. Who says it's good? Child, people love things that I do not love. Okay, every day. Something I would never listen to. People love to listen to it. Wonderful. This is not my job in this moment, right? My job now is to build the largest database. Can we get all of us here? Can we get every Black and brown podcast here? And I'm choosing to say Black and brown because we are stronger together than we are apart, in my opinion. There is a lot of podcasts produced by brown folks that I really enjoy, that I really want to listen to, and that I really want to support. And putting us together just makes this entity even stronger. And so, can we put us in one place? Can we find out how many of us there really are? Can we support each other's work in like this really beautiful way? Can we find out what other podcasts we can be swapping with? Right. I think there's just so many possibilities for the power of this database, which will then lend itself to be the dopest search engine. Right? Can we just build a dope search engine so we can find our stuff out here? And so that's where the Qube categories come in. That's where the deep search comes in. That's where what Robin told me about falling back in love with the problem, right? I really feel like I heard her in that moment, and centering the solution and what we're building in this moment feels so good. That's why I'm so excited about this next iteration.
You mentioned the brown part and everybody we work well together, and I've been sitting on this idea for the sound of us for a while now, and I was like, how sitting in an idea development purgatory, like, when do I do this? How do I want to do this? And when you text me last week, it was like, you know what? This is the time, right? This is the conversation to have it, because my tagline was one diaspora or many voices. And I felt like this
Mhm.
was an alignment. So that's why I was like panicking today, saying, like, let me get like making sure my ducks were in a row as I was finalizing everything. And it was just like, that was, I think it's important. That's why I started this newsletter, the Black Pod News, right? That's why I started the BPA, the Black Podcast Association. Yes, Crystal, I know I'm going to get a text about that. Um, but I think it's important for us to figure out how we can control, and that's the idea of this, is like, how do we control our narrative? How do we take control of our content, our spaces, and solve these problems that are affecting us, and take full control of it in this, especially in this climate that we're in right now, where we're constantly being attacked, and things are trying, things that people are trying to take certain privileges and rights away from us and stuff like that. So I think what you're doing is even more important now, than it was. It's almost critical, right? Because as the industry, I shouldn't say the industry, right? But as more players in the game start looking at our content and trying to silence certain voices and limit access, we have to push forward and support these things that you're doing. So I think it's commendable. I wanna, we spent a lot of time talking about you and this journey, but I think we're gonna probably go a little over our time.
Let's go. I want to take some questions too.
And I know, right? Like we have these plans, we write all these questions, we do everything we
Yeah.
want to do, and then the conversation just takes a life of its own.
Yeah.
I want you to talk about the Qube and what it is and what it is you're trying to do with it now. What is it now compared to what it used to be? Like what is the Qube today?
Yeah. The Qube today is no curation. There was never a cost, and there still is no cost. It's free to join, right? Listeners, creators, there's no gatekeeping here. The goal is to build the largest database so we can build the dopest search engine for Black and Brown podcasts. It's really, truly just that simple. I think you talked about the world we're living in today, right? This divestment from diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as somebody who lives at all these intersections of identities, I feel like every day there's another story about a piece of my identity that is being erased. Somebody is doing something legislatively to erase my identity um, from somewhere for some reason. And we all know very well how important it is for us to own our own stuff, to have our own places and spaces. And I to your point, Corey, what I thought was necessary 5 years ago is critical today. And also when I look at the industry and the platforms that exist, they weren't built for this. This was not an idea. When podcasting started, nobody thought that it would still be here now. That
Right.
was never the idea. So when you look at an Apple Podcast, they have an editorial team that is doing their very best. Some of these podcasters that are in here right now have been featured before, right? You submit, there's a form, right? They're doing their very best to try to highlight not only the big podcasts, but the independent ones as well. But there's never a world where they get to everybody. There just isn't. They're humans. They're literal humans as part of that editorial team, right? So many people have divested from Spotify for all of the reasons. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, right? And we all know what it takes to produce video. It's a whole nother world of work, right? And so how are we showing up on YouTube? And so we need a space where we can find all of our stuff in one place, where you can find exactly what you're looking for. And what I'm loving right now is big ups to Walt. I think I saw Walt in here in the chat earlier. We had a talk some weeks ago. He's like, Anna, you need to be on Threads. And uh, and I was like, Threads? He's like, and I was like, should I go under the Qube app? No, Anna, you need to be under your profile. You need to get on Threads. And the whole goal was that at the beginning of Q2, we would begin building the database. The goal is 500 by June 30th. And I was like, all right, the marketing wasn't ready yet to start doing public facing things. And we didn't have the templates in place and all these other things. And I was like, well, let me just start talking on Threads then. Walt said I should talk on Threads. Let me talk on Threads. And I have been blown away by the response on Threads. So I'm looking at the website right now. We've got 112 pods in the database. I'm going to tell you right now, 98 of them probably came from the April, during April on Threads. And the and just putting it out there about what we were building. And so for me, in this moment, it is about going to the people. We've got a strategy. We got a team in place. I ain't gonna shout them all out because, child, we ain't there yet. Okay, but just know there's a group of people who have said, "I believe in what you're doing, Anna, and I want to help you." And they're helping me. There's a revenue team. There's a marketing team. There's a podcast database building team. There's a development team. There's somebody helping me with legal things, and um, that type of foundation that I was able to build in Q1 of this year is now being executed in Q2 of this year. And so website is brand new, uh, simplified it, back to solving the problem, getting out my own way, focusing on the problem. So right now it's about building a database so we can have a dope search engine. And once we hit 500 pods, the next phase is to drop the beta version of the web application that'll live on our website and allow people to start using the beta version, giving us feedback, breaking it. Child, let's break it. You know, when Twitter broke in the beginning, okay, may I have an experience where the servers just fail? Okay. The
I don't know about that, but I get
oh boy, I want the servers to be so overwhelmed that all fails. Okay. And
there's
then we
things that
bounce
come
back.
with to help you with that, so you don't have to go through the experience of a server failure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's okay. Let it fail. Burn it up. Okay. And then we just get a new one. I so right now we're just at the very beginning of what it means to build the largest database, dopest search engine for a Black and Brown podcast.
All right, so I'm gonna ask a question. Why, besides the fact that you're building the database for Black and Brown podcasts, why should I put my podcast on your database? Like, would it like it?
Oh.
You know, because we live in a creative space, and a lot of times people do things because they want something in return. It's transactional. So,
Mhm.
what's the benefits?
Yeah, visibility. Find your people, right? We're also going to do quarterly thought leadership things, and we're going to do community building things. Also, we got plans for things that I'm not ready to talk about just yet. Um, but there will be more benefits for creators as we grow. But the immediate thing is visibility. It is being in a space where we are investing not only in this platform but in getting the audience that wants to see your and hear your podcast into this platform so they can find you, right? So when I talk about the Qube categories, this is an opportunity for us to say, I'm looking for male hosted podcasts about sports, about somebody over 40. Can I find that? Absolutely. If they exist, I want them in the in our database so they can find you. Maybe I'm looking for a first generation, someone who identifies as first generation. Maybe I'm looking for bilingual. Maybe I'm looking for society and culture and sports. Who is out here like that? Black queer woman over 40 wants to talk about Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ. Child, uh, like these deep searches, not just travel leisure. What's that?
Right.
Is that really getting us what we want when you go into these other places? The spirituality. Whose spirituality? What are we talking about here? So I want us to be able to find culturally aligned content because at the end of the day, that's what we're listening to anyway. And I want to make it easier for us to do that.
So, do you want to explain the process on how to sign up? What how people can go? Because the goal, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this with you too is like we gotta get you to 500, right?
Whoa, let's
I saw
go.
that email blast. I was hoping like people would jump on it, but like what can you explain like what the goal of 500 is about? And like what's is it a challenge? Is it just a personal goal? What is it?
No, we need milestones out here in these streets, okay? We need things to work towards. We need uncomfortable goals, okay? So much of the journey is also about being uncomfortable. And when I first, one of these lessons learned from the failure, when we were curating everything on the front end, we couldn't scale.
Yeah.
We had people listening 2 times, math had to be done, communication had to go back out. Like we were stifling our own growth. At this moment, just a month and a half into Q2, we have double the number of podcasts in the platform right now than I did 5 years ago, right? Removing that barrier of entry into the platform. So the number 500 means that somebody can come here and find something new all the time, right? It means that the database is large enough that the search feels worth it. And it feels like we're getting some momentum. I think people will always want to be part of something they feel like might actually make it. And that's the feeling we want to build here with the platform. Corey, I see there's a share your screen. Can I share my screen?
Yeah.
Come on, Lisa, Black Crafty Pods. Let's go. I haven't even been paying attention to the chat.
Yeah. Can it do it for you or?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Are we cute? So, y'all, this is the platform today, and if you were here before, you may remember what the site looked like before. It's different, and it's real simple. So, if you're a podcaster, and I think most of you all are, you just click on "I'm a podcaster," and you want to submit one show. I also know we got mad entrepreneurs out here, and some of y'all got networks. Okay, so we wanted to make it easier for you all to submit your network shows too. So, if you got multiple shows, you can come to this tab. But if you got one show, we're just asking you to put in your information. And Corey, I think another part that we did not talk about that I think is really, really important here is that we're not just accepting RSS feeds, we're also accepting YouTube URLs because we are in a moment where Black and Brown creators are producing shows on YouTube at such a high rate. And that podcast button is being used at such a high rate that we do ourselves an injustice being stuck in the idea that a podcast is only something that has an RSS feed. Yo, I'm an OG out here. I know what it means. I know why we felt that way. Okay. And it's 2026 and people are creating their podcasts on YouTube, and that's undeniable. This space is going to have that. So if your podcast is on YouTube, you too are welcome here. Okay. All right. So RSS, YouTube, you got both. Put them both in. If you want more information on your profile, do that. Not required. You see, there's no asterisk. Not required. And then you select your standard Apple categories. We have those, of course. But then we've got your Qube categories too, right? And I'm always open to hearing if there's categories that we don't have here. Threads has been great about this. People have given me suggestions. I send it right to our dev person, and he's been getting them in right away. So if there are other Qube categories that's going to give you the deeper search that you're looking for, please let me know. Okay, we want to add those in. And then we've got organizations and networks you are affiliated with. All right, there are so many of us. If you hear you're affiliated with Black Podcast Association, right? And this is me also being in love with my solution, but also solving a problem. Okay. That I think that when you find a podcast that you like, there's the likelihood is that you might like a podcast from that network as well. So if you like the Head Nod, for example, me and Adele, right? Head Nod. And that's produced by the Qube and DCP, well, maybe you want to see what else the Qube has produced out here in the world. You can click on their network and find their other podcasts. If you like what DCP's got going on in the world, click on DCP and see what other podcasts they've created. You can click on Black Podcasters Association and see all the podcasts associated with them. So that's what this section is all about. And if there's a network not listed here that you are affiliated with, let us know. We want to add it in here. And then there's a section for podcast hosts. If you're a single host, this is good enough, but you can add another host. Yes, do your thing, put your website. You got to agree to stuff, child. We got to agree to things, okay? We need terms. We need policy, privacy policies and all that good stuff. Hit submit, and then that's it. That's it. And the reason I'm also asking people for their profile picture and their bio is because when we think about what these profiles are going to look like, I think one thing that's also missing is the fact that people don't know the people behind the podcast. So I do believe people may come to your podcast because of the topic, but they stay because of you, right? The host is the show. You are the personality. And there's a huge disconnect. I believe there's a huge disconnect between seeing the artwork and seeing the people behind the artwork. So I really also want our work to be about centering the hosts and the creators behind this work. Because if I really love Black is America and I really love what Dominic did with that, I am probably going to really enjoy the rest of Dominic's work. And I want to know the other podcasts Dominic is producing with his network, right? And that's me really loving Dominic, right? Not just Black is America. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that point is very important, right? Like, we especially in a space that doesn't highlight a lot of Black creators, on the forefront.
Mhm.
And I know when like one of the reasons why I started this newsletter and one of the things I wanted to make sure I do is like highlight and promote not only just the host, but the producers, the editors, the people that are part of the team on these projects. Some of these big projects that like as I started getting more ingrained in the industry and learning, meeting people, I was like, oh, you're working on that. You worked on that podcast, and and I never hear their name mentioned in the thank yous, right? And it was like, now we need to have a platform. We need to have a space where we can promote ourselves and promote what we're doing. So I think that's very important. And I think for a lot of podcasts, they don't understand that road leads you down other places too, right? You mentioned Dominic, right? Look where Black as America has taken him, and look where it is taking him. He's got a documentary coming out, and he's moved more into that space. So
Mhm.
learning more about the person and learning more about their projects also helps support what we're doing and shows the value to the advertisers and to the people who have money and showing like, hey, look what we're doing over here, look what we're building, and look at the content we're putting out, and look at the engagement, and look at the fans we have. Like, it's worth your while being here, even though no matter how much the numbers always keep telling them this, we gotta work 10 times harder to do it. But I think that's important as well. So, and I think, listening to you talk, I think I kind of know what some of the future is coming with this, but don't wait to see it or not. I might start a poly market on that or something. Yeah, man.
I think the future it's so funny you say that, Corey. Every time I talk to somebody about what we're building, they have an idea about how they could use the platform. Like, depending upon how you are situated in this space, I was talking to somebody that was like, "Oh, I could go search and see who else is creating podcasts like I'm creating." Like, maybe we could be doing swaps, right? And then I talked to somebody else and they're like, "Oh, you could be running like mad surveys and getting mad data and finding out the real needs of Black and brown creators out here that could lend itself." Then I talked to somebody else and they was like, "So Anna, you gonna start a network? I mean, you might start selling some ads so everybody can make some money." And I'm like, "Child, uh, there's I think there's a lot of possibilities for where the cube can go. And it is in those moments that I am reminded of Robin's quote of fall in love with the problem and me focusing on one problem at a time and solving that and building our audience and actually making this a sustainable business, not just a community project, but this needs to be a revenue generating, sustainable business where we can employ people to be great at doing something that's really fun and dope, right? And so for me, I really just want to be a good steward
Yeah.
of this idea of this dream to build this thing, right? And be a good steward of it so that we can do all of this and whatever else, what other ideas come later. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When I was reading the article, when you sent it to me and I was reading it and, fall in love with the problem, you know, it reminded me of my own self-care in regards to like I'm helping other people, reminding them to fall in love with the problem. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in purgatory with my problem, and Crystal's probably going to hear this, but there's going to be a team meeting coming up because we gotta talk about some things. But I do really appreciate this. I really want to encourage people to sign up, put your podcast, and if it's not your podcast, so let me ask you that: if it's not their podcast and they want to add their favorite podcast to that, are they able to do so, or is that something that they have to spam the host with? To like, you need to be on the queue. We want you on the queue.
Oh, snap. Corey. Yes. Look at me. I can share my screen again. Wait. So we have on the homepage, we have this whole area to nominate a voice. So if you've got a podcast that's like your favorite pod, and so you don't spam them on social media, you can nominate them here as well, and we'll reach out to them. We will do the labor of the thing and reach out to them. Uh, and then when we get the platform up and going, you're gonna get some perks for doing such a thing. You're gonna be a community curator. You'll get a cute little badge, and then you collect what we're gonna call amps, where you can boost your favorite podcasts inside the platform too, so that they can get extra visibility.
So I have a feeling we're gonna have you back on here talking about, like, once we reach 500, we're gonna have you back on here talking about what the cube is at that moment, right? Because there's a whole lot of things that we have to. Let's get to 500, y'all. I'm tired of waiting.
Oh, let's get to 500.
500.
I'm excited about that number because it feels so uncomfortable. And actually, this week on the podcast, that was actually, if you listen to Queer News, if you don't, all good. But there's a part of my pod called Anna's Got a Word. And this week, my word was get uncomfortable because somebody else made me uncomfortable with my work in the best possible way. And it just reminded me how important that is because we can just get into the routine of doing, and we're all doing very well. I'm sure of it. Everybody in here is doing their thing. You're brilliant at what you do, and you can do it in your sleep. And so when we get into this routine of just doing, that sometimes can become very stagnant. And it is in the moment that somebody comes in to make us uncomfortable that we can actually, right, move to that next level that we're trying to get to. You're
Yeah.
right, get unstuck, right? So, um, that 500 is about me getting uncomfortable, uh, and getting unstuck from dreaming big, right? It's so easy to be sad or depressed around what's happening in the world. It's so easy for because life gets to life and child. I mean, we all got things going on. It's so easy to forget that we too can dream big and do the work to make it happen. Because it always feels impossible until somebody else does it. So that's why the 500, all the things, and let's do it. Let's go. We at 112.
All right, I'm gonna wrap up this part because I know you said you want to ask some questions, and we did have some questions and comments
Yeah.
in the comment section, and we'll get to those. But
Okay.
I want to wrap up with like tell people how they can support outside of just sign up. How else can we support you? Is there other ways people can support, whether it's financially through promotion? Like, what are some ways we can also support you on this mission?
Sure. Yeah. So we got a Substack. Come on, this is my first Substack live. I'm excited. I had to ask Corey, can I join from my desktop? How does this work? Uh, so we have a Substack that we are going to be investing a lot of time and energy into as part of building our community. We're going to have something called the Cubies. Everybody wants to be a Cubie out here. Y'all think that's cute? Let me know in the chat if y'all think the Cubies are cute. The Cubies are going to be part of our paid community of folks where I'm going to go live and ask about like app features, and I want y'all's opinion about those like deeper conversation. Is going to be available to the Cubies, and so if you go to our Substack, we've got tiers, $5 hollow, okay, $5 a month. That ain't nothing. That's still coffee. To become a part of the Cubies. So please join our Substack. Follow us there. More is coming there about sharing the journey. I think that's going to be really important to share the journey, the good things, the awful things, the hard things, the amazing things that happen. And so I really want to be intentional about that. And so we're going to do that on Substack. Another thing, if you got a newsletter, right? If you got a newsletter, we would love to be featured in your newsletter. If you've got a podcast with folks that are, our core target audience as well, happy to be a guest on your podcast. We got team members who are also happy to be guests on podcasts. And at this point, it's just about getting the word out so people know that we're out here and existing. This is literally the first and biggest public thing I've done to talk about this. So I feel like we out here now. So let's go.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna wrap up the conversation part. I do want to end this with one conversation. Like you've given us so much here. Now I want you to give to us, and this is kind of like maybe a little cheesy. I don't know, but I want to ask you, like in spirit of the sound of us, right? And the one diaspora, many voices. What is a charge you want to give us? What is what is something you need for us as a community to protect our voices, the sound of us as a collective, as in the diaspora?
Figure out how you are archiving your work. I do believe podcasters are our storytellers, are the storytellers of this time. And so if we could be doing anything for us right now in this moment, is thinking about how you are preserving your voice and your work. Our work is inherently digital. It inherently just lives on the internet. But as we saw in January 2025, when TikTok just disappeared, where someone just hit the flip of a switch and it all went dark, we don't own this. And so my hope is that we are all doing the work of figuring out how someone 100 years from now is able to listen to Lisa talking about sewing, okay, on Stitch Please. Okay, that's going to be important. And so, how are we doing that? And so, if anything, in this moment, I hope that we are all investing in time and energy and space into how we preserve our voices. One thing we've done here at the Qube is that we produced our first vinyl, right? And y'all, I got word this week that they were finally delivered. They are making it out to people's homes this week. And during that process, I found out that we were the first ones to put Black and brown voices on vinyl. And that's how I chose to do it, as a way of discoverability, as a way to say we were here. You can't erase something I'm holding in my hand. Okay. So do that. Figure it out. Don't just be publishing episodes out here in the world, putting them on Dropbox, putting them on a drive, putting them in a cloud. Where truly, how is somebody gonna find it in 100 years? I really want us to think about that.
All right, that's dope. Thank you. So let people know how they can find you, how they can reach out to you, support you, and also, if there's any shout outs you want to give. I know it's a long list, but any particular people you want to shout out, feel free to do so.
Yeah, follow the Qube, right? TheQube app everywhere. Instagram. I really want y'all on the Substack though. So really, truly, let's follow the Substack.
That link, we'll put that link in everything. We'll put that link in the show notes and everything. So I got you on that one.
Perfect. I really want to grow on Substack here. So the Qube app, follow us, add your podcast, please. That would be fantastic. Tell a friend to add their podcast. I mean, this is how this is going to work. This is us saying we believe in this thing. And so that's the first thing I want y'all to do. Yeah, you can feel free to follow me at Anna DeShawn across all social media, wherever you do social, I'm there most likely. And I'm not doing shout outs because that is going to get me in trouble. But let's be very clear. Let's be very clear. There's a team of people who are helping me build this. I am not building this alone. There was a time in my life, and I think so many of us can attest to this, where we were cool with doing it by ourselves. We can do everything. We know how to produce everything. We know how to edit everything, right? We know how to make a thing move. Yes, done that. It's beautiful. And I'm in a place where I don't want to do it by myself. I don't want to do it alone. And as a matter of fact, I want to do it with people who are smarter than me, who have a different way of thinking than I do, so that we can really, really make something really, really dope. And so I'm really grateful to those individuals, and they know exactly who they are. And I'm grateful for the circle of trust that I have in my life, the group text messages, okay, of people that we check in with each other and we make sure we're all doing okay, because we're all out here dreaming, right? And working to make our dreams come true in this creative space that does not seem to have our best interests at heart. So my shout outs are to those people because I love them so much. And then Corey, thank you. Thank you for starting Black Podcasters Association. Thank you for creating this space. You have built a space with over 5,000 subscribers. Yo, like Corey, you out here doing a thing and you've been consistent at it and you got a good heart. And I appreciate you.
Well,
Thank
you
you.
on here, and we don't want that.
Well,
I got a personality to maintain.
I don't know. I don't know how many people want to see Corey cry. But truly, truly, I really mean it. Thank you.
Well, for those watching right now, if you have any questions for Anna, please feel free to drop it in the chat. I've been scrolling through this. If I missed it, I'm sorry, but we have a lot of comments. I'm gonna start with Stephanie Graham, right?
Definitely.
She says, "Hey, do y'all count Asians as brown? LOL." I mentioned it to an Asian man, and he said they were yellow, and I was like, "Oh." So is it only? I know you mentioned black and brown, but we have other groups within the that are also marginalized in this space. Are they open to?
So let me tell y'all about this story, okay? I also had to talk with some Asian folks, and they were like, "Oh, we don't identify as brown." I was like, "Oh." And so there was an iteration also of this work where I would use BIPOC, yes, Black, Indigenous, people of color, which I think resonates more deeply in the Asian community. And I would be outside marketing, pitching, and people didn't know what BIPOC meant. I If I use POC, people didn't know what that meant. I was running into this.
Yeah.
I couldn't get to telling the about my solution, right? The problems we were solving because I'm having challenges communicating what the acronym is. Well, this is where we're starting with so many people. And so I've gotten away from using BIPOC. I was also using QTPOC, queer trans people of color. People really didn't know what that was. And so I couldn't even get to my why in conversations with people. So that's why I'm using black and brown. I really do mean all people of color. And everybody welcome here if you are a person of color. But I have to make it simple, child, I just be saying black and
You actually just probably gave me a topic conversation that needs to happen because, like one time I mentioned somebody Latinx and they were Latino and I got a whole reaman for it. So like, I got schooled and boxed up over it. So like, and I think that's that's an issue with, and it's in this crazy world we live in right now, with all these different terms and people knowing them. So I understand because I want people to understand you're not. If anybody knows Anna, you're not an exclusionary person. So like, I don't want people to take that the language that you're using is just specifically like to single out people. So I think that's going to be an important part of the conversation as well. But I understand you trying to figure out how to communicate the problem, and which was creating more problems. So yeah,
don't we always? I also think that it's part of my work is to go to those communities as well and express that we want them in the platform, right? I think that idea of we build it and they will come is such a farce. What a lie. Who told that lie? Just because it was a movie? Child, you build it and then you tell people about it and you invite people in
right.
and you give them an opportunity to see what you're building, see if it aligns with what they believe in, right? And give them an opportunity. So I think also the work is on me to go into those communities and just explain what we're building as well and that it is for them.
All right. This question comes from Walter Gaynor, Walt the Great,
Whoa.
the Great Walt. Sorry. Uh, his question is there a mobile version being developed?
Yes, the web app will be mobile friendly. The website today is mobile friendly, and so absolutely. The big dream though is a mobile app that you can go to your, app store and download. But we need a lot of financial sustainability to get to that point. I know that there's a lot of AI platforms where you can go out here and create a mobile app really quickly. I'm not looking for quick in this moment. I'm looking for something that's gonna be able to scale with us, um, in a thoughtful way. So that's why we're starting with the web app first, build audience, show viability, sustainability, and then we can work on what the next phase of what it means to move from a web application to a mobile application actually looks like.
I think that is a definitely smart strategy.
Thanks, Corey.
All right.
Learning from the lessons of the past, child.
Yeah. Mm. Especially in
It's
this age of
awesome.
AI when people want to get things out there and instant gratification and I think I think I think we need I see us going back into that kind of phasing, down the road in a couple of years because we're just constantly being hit with all this slop from AI. And I think, that I'm not gonna get on my soapbox about the AI stuff, but I think that's a good approach. Mr. Alp asks, is there information you can share to network owners so they can share with their shows? And this was during when you were talking about adding your show to the platform.
Oh, 100%. Nope, but I will now. A one pager? Yeah, we could put a one pager together, absolutely. Easy work. I will work on that.
Tony Kennedy asks, will there be a kids and family category in the Qube categories asking for a friend named Tony?
Tony, yeah, we don't have that? What a misstep. Oh, it's parenting. Nope. Uh, okay, we'll add kids and parenting. Or Tony, DM me. Tell me, what you think would be a cuter name than just parenting. But yes, absolutely.
All right, we got one from Shamiko. Shamiko Reed. Do you also want shows that aren't producing new episodes?
If it is evergreen content, absolutely. Yes. Um, so for example, like my show, Queer News, is not evergreen content. So if I'm not producing every week, then whenever I choose to sunset it, it should be sunset because what happened last week is not what happened this week. But an audio drama, for example, if your pod is like interview based and I think there's lots of examples of evergreen content. Definitely down for evergreen content.
Yeah, that was the second part. I didn't see the second part of our question, which was like an audio drama series that has ended. So,
Yeah, that's totally cool.
and we have the great Yanni Washington Smith. She's asking, her shows are on there. Can she update her show listings?
Yeah, so I'm starting completely fresh. So Yanni, I know you were part of the first iteration. So just feel free to add your shows again. Um, there isn't an update. I literally just started from the beginning. So please just re-add.
Okay. So if your show was on the first iteration of the Qube, please come back and add it to this new iteration.
Correct.
Mr. Al Pete asked, do you have an audio commercial people can run on their shows?
Not yet, but I did think somebody did tell me to do that. And I will do that. And I think Crystal's gonna send me another text so I don't forget. But that is on the list because somebody mentioned that to me. They was like, "Anna, why didn't you think about that?" I was like, I don't know. I don't know." Um, but yes, I am gonna do that. And maybe when it's done, should I just post it in BPA? Black Podcast Association?
Yeah, you could do that, and you can always let me know. We can also, however, whatever the strategy is, you just let us know, and we'll
Okay.
post it wherever we need to post it.
I think probably the first thing we would do is send it out to the people who have submitted their podcasts.
Yeah.
Via our email system and let you all know, but I'm also down to post it inside Black Podcast Association Network. Um,
Okay.
Maybe it's a post, a collaborative post. We can find a way to get the word out. But I would love for people to play it on their shows and also let me know that you played it on your show. So I think that's one thing that also is a downer is that people might do it, but then I don't know because I would love to shout people out and say thank you.
Okay. Well, that'll be coming soon, everybody. Lisa Wolford asks, how do we access the press kit promo materials?
Oh, it's gonna be a link. There's gonna be a link to an EPK, an electronic press kit. It's gonna have all the things that you just mentioned: press release, bios, images, um, all those things. So once again, actually, that'll probably come out at the same time as the ad. So add your show so you can make sure you get the emails and so you don't miss any of this. Because yes, that is almost final.
Yeah, sorry, I'm laughing because I'm seeing the comments from when I was talking about crying.
Yeah,
Oh man.
people agree, don't they?
All right. I'm gonna come back to your question, Tony, real quick. I'm gonna answer this one. I see it's an L star, I guess. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. Um, how do we start placing Black and brown voices at the forefront of political change? Emphasis on making it a collective effort that is effective.
Mm. So I think we're doing some of that, but I would love to see more independent creators doing that, right? So, um, and I think we have to find collaborative ways to do it. That's another reason I wanted to join Substack because in this moment, there are so many ways to go live with other creators and reaching multiple audiences. I really do think we have to lean into we're stronger together than we are apart. Like, I don't think that this is a moment where anybody, any of us, should be doing anything by ourselves. Like, if you're creating something, you should be working with somebody else who's also creating something, and you all should be amplifying each other's work. So I think that when we talk about creating some type of movement or change or education, that we should be collaborating to do that. And I think it can show up in lots of different ways however you want to show up in the world and on the internet. I think there's lots of possibilities, but I do think the power is in us doing it together and figuring out ways to do it together.
And I think what you're building is a good way to find those podcasts. Like when people are doing it, to find the podcast, to find the episodes where that's happening, because that's another part, right? It's like if people are doing it, how do we find it? Where do we find it? Especially when you have algorithms and platforms that kind of stifle that type of content when you try to promote it. So I think that's makes what you're doing even more important, where we have a central place where we can go and find this stuff without having to worry about doing, what platform is gonna stifle it or hold, or what did people call it? Shadow ban it and stuff like that, so
And that's what I've experienced. I mean, my whole show is called Queer News. Child.
I can
Um,
only imagine what you to
it's wild out here in these streets for me, so I overstand what that
right,
experience is like. So, um, ways in which we can go back to just, uh, owning our own lists, right? Sort of like going back to the basics, owning your own newsletter list, creating your own communities, within your podcasts, collaborating with other podcasters. I mean, I think that's what this moment is.
alright, I think, Tony asked, do you think that someday streaming platforms like Apple and Spotify will pay residuals the same way musicians do?
I don't see how with the current model, the
Right.
current business model, I don't see it.
But I think that goes back to what you're saying, controlling your list, controlling your communities, and finding other ways to create income or residual income for yourself through the support and through the ownership of your own assets, content, and so forth and so forth on.
Yes. Yes. Uh, music has always had this residual business model that then just carried over into the digital space,
Right.
right? Television has always had a residual model that just is carried over into the digital space. Podcasting is digital first, and there was never a model for it.
Okay.
Is it possible? Mhm. Will they?
I think these are be conversations we want to explore further down the road as well.
Yeah. It's a great question, though.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
Leah B asked, where can you find your podcast once you sign up in the app?
Oh, you'll have a profile. We're gonna make it cute. So, you'll have your own profile, your own account, and then you can go in there and update whatever you need to update in your own profile. Uh, and then as we grow, I also want your profile to have a dashboard where you can see how many people visited your show. You know, we're gonna have like microphones and mutes and amps, and so you'll be able to see some basic data. Um, and then there will be some type of paid tiers at some point if you wanna pay for extra stuff, but end of the day, you'll for free, no cost, there'll be a profile, there'll be a dashboard with some basic stats, so you can have an idea that being on the Qube is actually working, maybe pushing, more viewership, audience to your show, and that's the idea right now.
All right. Well, I don't see any more questions, so I guess we could start wrapping up. Again, Anna, thank you for taking your time out and coming on here and talking to us about the Cube, telling us about your journey. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot about what I already know a lot about you, but I learned even some more, and I do really appreciate it. And I hope people who come back and watch this or listen to this in the future can learn something and be inspired, because you definitely we got a last question, but let me finish this point. Definitely help other people in this space like like you've been doing so far. So really appreciate it. Uh, I'm going to screw up your name, and I'm sorry, Trevor. Trevor Taminian. Taminian. Do you have a dream podcast to join?
Oh, what a good question. That is not something I've been dreaming about. But child, I think if like Reliving Singles podcast joined it, like I might not stop talking. um,
All right, let's make it happen.
I
Let's
mean,
make it happen. Let's start the campaign to 500, but also the campaign to get Relive Single podcast on the Cube. Like
yo, period.
do it.
I mean, why not? I think I think that would be really, really cool. I I don't necessarily. It's not something. Honestly, all honesty, it's not something I have been thinking about. In that way, I am just I'm more about indie podcasts than I am about the celebrity podcasts. And I also recognize the importance of getting big names on board to extend the reach of this work because they have large audiences. And so I think that I hope that the Cube is a space where we can find the balance of what it means to have celebrity pods and indie pods playing in the sandbox together. Right. And making sure and ensuring that our indie podcasters get as much, if not more, shine than the celebrity podcasts and some of these larger networks.
All right. So Anna,
Yeah.
just remind everybody one more time for the Cube as well as the newsletter, since we want to get people subscribed to you on there. And I think you definitely should subscribe. Some great reads on there. Um, Let everybody know again, and we'll wrap up.
For sure. The Qube app. Follow me. The platform, TheQube app. Here on Substack, on Instagram. I appreciate Crystal. I see she been dropping links. She just be doing this on her own. We didn't even have a conversation. I'm so grateful. Thank you, my friend. Um, Dropping all the information here. So the Qube app, Instagram, Substack, and then you can follow me at Anna DeShawn wherever you do social media. And truly, once again, just thank you. Thank y'all so much for coming on and hanging out tonight. We went way longer than we talked about, Corey, and it was wonderful every second of it.
It
So
feel like it though, so I'm good.
y'all stayed on, and I'm really grateful. So
Yeah.
just thank you. And I hope y'all do choose to join the Substack to follow the journey in a much deeper way, in a much more thoughtful way. Because that's really where I plan to share so much of the journey. So thanks.
Well, thank you, Anna, as always, for coming on and telling us your story. This is The Sound of Us with Corey Gumbs. If you're not a subscriber to Black Pod News, you can subscribe right here on Substack, and I look forward to continuing more conversations like this on this new podcast that I'm launching. So I'm so happy to have you here, Anna, and thank you everybody for checking in and staying through this and asking your questions and participating. So have a good night, and we'll talk to you next time. Substack doesn't want to end.
Oh, okay. I could keep smiling. I'm a new person, child. We stay on TV.